Aaron from A-Land here, and welcome to your IELTS Listening course. Today we have 3 numbers on the board, and I want you to help me figure out what they're all about. So let's begin with the first number, 40. This number relates to a word that's spelled T-I-M-E. What does that spell? Time! Excellent! Time. Now let's try the second 40. This 40 is related to this word. What word is this? Questions. Fantastic. Questions. And finally, we come to number 4. So number 4 is pronounced like this. Can you pronounce this word for me? Beautiful. Sections. Sections. Excellent. And these 3 words are related to IELTS listening. So that's what we're going to be talking all about today. We're going to do a quick overview of the IELTS listening. We are going to talk a little bit about how the test is structured, what you can expect, and also I will give you some tips for you to use when practicing for the test or when taking the test. Now let's begin with this. Remember these 3 numbers? Well, the first one is the number of sections in the test. The test is divided into 4 sections, and we'll discuss them a little bit later in the video. There are also 40 questions. This is the total number of questions that you will be answering during the test. As you can see, there are 4 sections, and so each section will have 10 questions for you to answer. And the final 40 is time. You will be given 30 minutes to listen to all of the audio in the test, and then 10 minutes for you to write down the answers on your answer sheet. This is the basic information that you need to know about the IELTS listening test. Now let's talk a little bit about the content. This is something that you might see within the test. So it's an exercise that is asking us to fill out 2 details, number 7 and number 8, an address and a postcode. Now, let's take a look at the audio. Could you send it to 27 Arbuthnot Place? A-R-B-U-T-H-N-O-T Place, Dumfries. And what is the postcode, please? DG7 4PH. So, as you can see, we already have our 2 answers in that piece of audio. The first one would be Arbuthnot Place, and the second one would be DG7 4PH. Now there's something very interesting about this. You may have noticed it already, but the order that the answers are in is the same order that they will be in within the audio. Okay, so Arbuthnot is first, and then number 8 is right here. That will always be the case. So if you miss this answer, for example, and hear this one, that means this one is long gone. Just keep going, okay? Now let's take a look at our sum up. Now we know how many sections the IELTS listening test have, 4. We know how many questions we're going to answer, 40. We know how much time we're going to spend in this test, 30 minutes listening to audio and 10 minutes writing down the answers in our answer sheet. And the last one is that the questions will be in the order that they are written down. This is something you need to become familiar with. There aren't a lot of types of questions on the IELTS listening test, so you need to know which ones there are and how to answer them, as they are a little bit different one from the other. This is another type of question that you might see in the IELTS test. Let's see what it's called. You know what word that is? Excellent. Summary. So it's a summary completion. There we go. Now, in the form completion, it's very straight to the point. It's A and B. In the summary completion, the text is a little bit more open to interpretation, so you need to pay attention to what you're listening for. Okay? So be very careful with these. Now, let's talk about this one. This is the most common type of question that you will get in the IELTS test. It's a multiple, what's this word? Choice. Excellent. So multiple choice. We're all very familiar with multiple choice. A, B, C, and pick the best answer for your question. Now, you have to be very careful with these kinds of questions. In the IELTS listening test, there's something called a distractor. So it's something that sounds like the answer, but isn't really. You'll usually hear people correct themselves or add more information to their answer during the audio. So you need to be very careful of which one are you going to pick. Now, there's this beautiful map of what seems to be a park. Now, as you can see, it doesn't really tell us everything. So what are we going to do with this map? We're going to label it. This is another exercise that you will find in the IELTS listening test. It's called map labeling. So you'll be given a map and you'll be told to pick where parts of this map are. Now, this can be a little bit hard for some people because it requires a little bit more imagination and spatial awareness, which means you need to follow very closely what you're listening to know where you are in this map. Okay? Because they'll tell you, oh, to the left this is, to the right this is. But you need to also remember where in the map you are at the moment. And the last one is this one. This is the last type of exercise that you will see, which is matching. Excellent. Matching information. So you'll be given a couple of choices. For example, we have A, B, and C. And then you'll be given a list. And now you have to pair whatever you think the best choice is at the top with the ones at the bottom. On this exercise, for example, we have the option to choose any letter more than once. So for example, I would pick A for 21 and 23 and 25. That's perfectly fine. That's why it's always very important to read the instructions. Don't forget about that. Now, let's sum up. For the completion, we have forms. We can also have notes. We have sentences. And we have summaries. We can also have multiple choice questions, which remember, these are the most common questions that you will find. We can also have maps or diagrams for machinery, for example, and you'll be asked to label those. And the last one is matching information. Now, these sections are divided into two. We have general and academic, and this is how we divide them. On section 1, you will hear two people having a conversation where they exchange information, names, numbers, addresses. On section 2, you will hear a monologue talking about a place, for example, a bank or a school. On section 3, you will have two people talking again, but this time it will have an academic focus. In the last one, section 4, you will hear a monologue about an academic subject. Usually it will be a professor or a student. Now, let's move on to some tips. First tip for today is read the instructions. I've repeated this a couple of times throughout the video, but this is very important. Why is that? Because if the instructions tell you write one word and or a number for each answer, that means there is a word limit. You do not want to go over that word limit. If it specifies one word, you write one word. If it specifies 3 words, you write 3 words. That is very important to keep in mind, and that is where a lot of students fail. Now, for tip number 2, we have this exercise where it says, prepare some blank. So clearly, this is where our answer will be. But on the audio, this is what we hear. Okay, well, I'd better do some slides instead. So what do you think the answer will be for this one? Correct, slides. As you can see, it's not the same vocabulary that we're using up here on the answer than here on the audio. The word that has been changed on this one is prepare and do. So you need to make sure to take those context clues so that you answer correctly. Paraphrasing, very important. When you paraphrase, you say the same thing, just using different words. So that's very important to keep in mind when taking this test. And let's sum up. Word limit, make sure you know how many words you're supposed to answer in. And finally, paraphrase. You won't always get the cues exactly as they are on the paper. So let's sum this up. You now know the basic information about the IELTS listening test. You also know the types of questions that you will be asked. You also know what the common topics for the test are. And finally, you know a couple of tips that will help you improve your listening. And with that, we come to the end of our IELTS listening overview. We hope you enjoyed the video, and remember to like, share, and subscribe so that you keep updated with all the videos that we'll be posting up. Goodbye.